Let me show you something really interesting about what Paul was dealing with in the church of Galatia, where he warns in Galatians chapter 4, starting with verse 21. He says, listen, you cannot bring anything from the old covenant, from the law of Moses, into the new covenant. And he says, here's why. Because Christ has already fulfilled all those things. And if you go back to them, you're going to focus on having a relationship with God by the law. And you're going to forget Christ on the cross. And he goes in verse 21, he says, tell me, you that desire to be back under the law, do you not hear what the law says? He says, it has an insatiable appetite and you cannot do it. You dip one toe in there, you got to do the entire thing. And as he builds on this story and a juxtaposition, he says in verse 22, for it is written that Abraham has two sons, the one by a bondmaid, and we know that that is Hagar, the other by a free woman, that's his wife Sarah. As it goes to verse 23, but he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh. Her son was Ishmael. But he who was after the free woman was of promise. That's Isaac. We know this very clearly. But verse 24, he begins to make this clear separation that you can have one or the other, but you can't have both. Look what it says in verse 24. Which things are an allegory, for these are two covenants. The one is from Mount Sinai, which genders to bondage. And he says, that's Hagar. Sinai is bondage. And he says, that's Hagar. Look what it goes on. He says, verse 25, for this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and answers to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, New Jerusalem, is free, which is the mother of us all. He says, you can either have Ishmael or you can have Isaac. You can have Sinai or you can have New Jerusalem. You can pick one or the other, but you can't have both. He says in verse 28, now we, brethren, are from Isaac, and we are children of promise. Now, what does he tell us to do? Nevertheless, what says the scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of a bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free. Cast out the bondwoman and her son. The woman that was of bondage is Sinai. The woman of freedom is his wife, Sarah, that had the child of promise from which the lineage of the Messiah came. So he says you can have Ishmael or you can have Isaac. You can have Hagar or you can have Sarah. You can have Sinai or you can have New Jerusalem. But you can't have both. Pick one today, my friends. Please.